Richard owned everything. Or at least he acted like it. His buildings scraped the sky, his cars gleamed like jewels, and his suits cost more than most people earned in a year. He was super rich but also super stuck up. Richard believed he was better than everyone else. He strutted through his enormous office, barely glancing at the people working hard at their desks. To him, they were just there, like fancy furniture that typed and answered phones. He'd snap his fingers for coffee and someone would appear instantly. He never said please or thank you. Why should he? They were lucky to be in his presence. One afternoon, Richard was in a terrible mood because his special imported water wasn't cold enough. He stomped out of his office, ready to yell at someone. He was so busy thinking about the lukewarm water that he didn't watch where he was going. He considered everyone beneath him and never imagined that he would have to be aware of the people around him. He marched down the hall, past rows of desks and cubicles, and right into a small step stool someone had left out. The stool had been placed there by Maya. Bam! Richard went flying, papers scattering everywhere. He landed with a thump, his perfectly tailored suit now covered in dust and his pride thoroughly bruised. He was not happy. Not one bit. It wasn't just a little stumble. Oh no, Richard's fall was spectacular. His legs flailed, his arms windmilled, and he let out a yelp that sounded like a surprised puppy. He landed hard, twisting his ankle in the process. My suit, he roared, completely ignoring the throbbing pain in his ankle. Do you know how much this cost? He glared at the ceiling as if it were personally responsible for the step stool's existence. He tried to stand, but a sharp pain shot up his leg. Ouch! He sank back down, clutching his ankle. It was definitely hurt. Maybe even broken. He had never felt pain like this. Usually, if he had a headache, someone would bring him a special ice pack and a cup of herbal tea. But this was different. This was real pain. He looked around at the scattered papers. Reports, contracts, important documents, all mixed up with his expensive, now dusty shoes. He was a mess. The mighty Richard, brought down by a step stool. It was humiliating. A few of his employees cautiously peeked out from their cubicles, unsure of what to do. They had never seen their boss like this, vulnerable and clearly in pain. Normally, he was untouchable. Richard scowled at them. Don't just stand there. Help me up, he barked. But even as he said it, he knew he couldn't put any weight on his ankle. This was going to be a problem. A big, painful, and embarrassing problem. Just as Richard was about to demand someone call a helicopter to airlift him out of this mess, a small, hesitant voice spoke up. Mr. Richard? He looked down and saw Maya. She was holding a stack of papers, her eyes wide with worry. Her face was red from embarrassment. I am so sorry, she stammered. I left the step stool out. I was reaching for a file and I forgot to put it away. Richard's eyes narrowed. This was the culprit. This was the person responsible for his pain, his ruined suit, and his utter humiliation. You, he bellowed, his voice echoing through the office. You did this to me. Maya flinched. She hadn't meant to cause any trouble. She was always careful and considerate. But today she'd been in a hurry trying to finish a report before lunch. And now, because of her mistake, her boss was hurt. I really am sorry, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Is there anything I can do to help? She stepped forward, offering her hand. Maybe I can help you up. Richard recoiled as if she'd offered him a poisonous snake. Don't touch me, he snapped. You've done enough already. He glared at her, his eyes filled with anger. But beneath the anger, Maya could see a flicker of pain and, maybe, just maybe, a hint of fear. She truly felt awful for him, even though he was being so mean. She knew she needed to make things right. Get away from me, Richard spat, his face contorted with anger and pain. You're probably trying to steal my watch or something. He didn't really believe that, but he was so used to thinking the worst of people, especially those he considered below him. Maya's heart sank. She hadn't expected a thank you, but she certainly hadn't expected to be accused of theft. I would never, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I just want to help. Help? Richard scoffed. The only way you can help is by disappearing. Maybe moving to another country. Somewhere I'll never have to see your clumsy face again. He knew he was being cruel, but he couldn't help himself. He was used to getting his way, and right now he wanted to be angry. He wanted to blame someone for his misfortune. He waved his hand dismissively. Just leave me alone. Call security or something. Tell them to get me out of here. He closed his eyes, trying to block out the pain and the embarrassment. He could hear Maya still standing there, and it irritated him. Why wouldn't she just go away? But, Mr. Richard, Maya persisted, her voice soft but firm. You need help. You can't just sit here. She glanced around at the other employees who were still watching from a distance, unsure of what to do. Someone needs to call a doctor. Richard just groaned in response. He was being so difficult. Maya ignored Richard's grumbling. She knew he was just scared and in pain. Instead of leaving, she took charge. "Okay, everyone," she said, her voice surprisingly confident. "Someone get Mr. Richard a chair. And someone else, please call a doctor." A few employees finally snapped out of their daze and started to move. One brought over a rolling office chair while another nervously dialed the doctor's office. Maya knelt beside Richard, ignoring his protests. "Here," she said gently. "Let's get you into the chair." She carefully helped him scoot forward, supporting his weight as he shifted. Richard winced in pain, but he didn't yell this time. He was starting to realize that Maya was actually trying to help. It took a few minutes, but they finally managed to get him into the chair. Maya then grabbed a small ice pack from the office kitchen and carefully placed it on his swollen ankle. "This will help with the pain," she said, offering him a small, reassuring smile. Richard stared at her, confused. Why was she being so nice to him after he had been so awful to her? He was used to people being nice to him because he was rich and powerful, but Maya didn't seem to care about any of that. She was just being kind simply because he needed help. It was a strange and unfamiliar feeling. He didn't know what to make of it. He just knew that, despite his grumpy exterior, he was secretly grateful. As Richard sat in the rolling chair, ice pack on his ankle, he watched Maya. She was busy directing the other employees, making sure everything was taken care of. She spoke calmly and kindly, and people seemed to listen to her. It was strange. He was the boss, but right now she was the one in charge. He had always thought of his employees as just employees, faces in the office, people who did what he told them to do. He never really considered that they might have their own thoughts, feelings, or even skills. He especially never thought about them as people who might be better at something than he was. But Maya was different. She wasn't intimidated by him. She wasn't fawning over him. She was just helpful and kind and surprisingly strong. He started to realize that she wasn't just some clumsy worker who left a step stool in the wrong place. She was a good person. This realization made him uncomfortable. It challenged everything he thought he knew about the world. He was used to dividing people into two categories, those who were useful to him and those who weren't. Maya didn't fit into either category. She was simply good. He didn't understand this new feeling. It was like a little seed of doubt had been planted in his brain and it was starting to sprout. He was used to feeling superior, in control, and always right. Now he felt confused, humbled, and maybe even a little bit wrong. It was a very strange and unsettling sensation. The doctor confirmed Richard had sprained his ankle badly and needed to stay off it for a few weeks. Being Richard, he couldn't possibly navigate his enormous apartment alone. So, against his better judgment, he hired Maya to help him while he recovered. He quickly realized how little he knew about everyday life. "Where does one acquire food?" he asked Maya one day, staring blankly at his empty refrigerator. Maya blinked. "You mean groceries? You go to the grocery store." Richard looked horrified. "I can't possibly go to a grocery store. People will see me. And what do I even do there?" So Maya took him. He wore a ridiculous disguise, sunglasses, a baseball cap pulled low, and a scarf covering half his face, but he still looked completely out of place pushing a shopping cart. Maya patiently showed him how to pick out vegetables, how to compare prices, and even how to use a self-checkout machine, which nearly resulted in a complete meltdown. Later, Maya took him to a soup kitchen where she volunteered. Richard had never seen so many people in need. He awkwardly ladled soup, trying not to spill it on his expensive shoes. He was surprised by the genuine smiles and thank yous he received. He began to see the world in a different light. He was so used to being waited on, to having everything done for him, that he had never considered the simple act of helping others. It was surprisingly rewarding. And it was all thanks to Maya. She was showing him a whole new world, one he never knew existed. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Richard started to change. It began with small things. He stopped snapping his fingers for coffee and started saying please and thank you, albeit mumbled and grudgingly at first. He even started remembering Maya's name, instead of just calling her the helper. One day, he saw the doorman struggling to carry a heavy package. Without thinking, Richard hobbled over, still favoring his ankle, and helped him lift it. The doorman looked surprised, then offered a genuine smile. Richard felt a warmth spread through him, a feeling he hadn't experienced before. He even started smiling. It was a tiny, hesitant smile, barely a twitch of his lips, but it was there. Maya noticed it one afternoon when she was showing him how to fold laundry. He actually laughed when she accidentally turned his expensive silk shirt pink. The biggest change was how he treated his employees. When he finally returned to the office, he made an effort to greet everyone by name. He asked about their families, their hobbies, even their pets. He listened to their answers, genuinely interested. His employees were stunned. They had never seen this side of Richard. They were used to his icy glares and demanding orders. Now he was nice? It was so unexpected that some of them wondered if he had been replaced by an alien. But Maya knew the truth. She knew that Richard was simply discovering the joy of being kind. And she had played a part in that. It made her heart feel a little bit lighter. As the weeks passed, Richard realized something else was changing. It wasn't just his attitude or his behavior. It was his feelings. He started to look forward to Maya's arrival each morning. He enjoyed their conversations, even the ones about laundry and grocery shopping. He found himself smiling more when she was around. One evening, as they were watching a silly movie on TV, Richard glanced at Maya. She was laughing, her eyes sparkling, and he suddenly felt a strange flutter in his chest. It was then that he realized it. He had feelings for Maya. He was completely terrified. He had never felt anything like this before. He was used to controlling everything in his life, his business, his money, his image. But he couldn't control these feelings. They were new and confusing and vulnerable. Vulnerability was not something Richard was comfortable with. He had spent his entire life building walls around himself, protecting himself from getting hurt. Letting someone in, truly letting them in, was a scary thought. What if Maya didn't feel the same way? What if she was just being nice to him because he was her boss? What if he made a fool of himself? The thought of rejection was almost unbearable. He decided to keep his feelings a secret. He would just pretend that everything was normal. But it was hard. Every time he looked at Maya, his heart would beat a little faster. Every time she smiled at him, he would feel a little bit weaker. He was falling, and he didn't know how to stop himself. He had never been this exposed, and he didn't like it. Not one bit. Maya had mentioned, almost in passing, that her old car was constantly breaking down. It was important for her to get to work and to her volunteer job at the soup kitchen, but she couldn't afford to fix it properly. Richard, overhearing this, saw an opportunity to show her how he felt without actually saying the words. He secretly arranged for her car to be towed to his personal mechanic. He told the mechanic to fix everything, no matter the cost. He even had the car detailed and given a fresh coat of paint. A few days later, Maya came to work looking defeated. "My car broke down again," she sighed. "I don't know what I'm going to do." Richard, trying to appear nonchalant, said, "Oh really? That's terrible. Maybe I can help." He hated how awkward he sounded. He was used to commanding boardrooms, not offering help with broken-down cars. He handed her a set of keys. I had it looked at," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. It's ready now." Maya looked confused. "You did?" She took the keys and rushed outside. When she saw her car, she gasped. It looked brand new. She ran back inside, her eyes shining with tears. "Mr. Richard," she said, her voice choked with emotion. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much." She threw her arms around him in a hug. Richard froze for a moment, surprised by the sudden contact. Then he slowly wrapped his arms around her too. It was the best hug he had ever received. He finally felt like he had done something truly good, something that wasn't about money or power, but about kindness and caring. And it felt amazing. After the hug, things felt different between Richard and Maya. It wasn't just a boss-employee relationship anymore. There was a warmth, a connection that hadn't been there before. Maya had always seen Richard as a grumpy, demanding billionaire. Someone who was out of touch with reality and didn't care about anyone but himself. But she had also seen glimpses of something else, a vulnerability, a loneliness hidden beneath the arrogance. Now, she was seeing a completely new side of him. He was still a little awkward and unsure of himself, but he was trying. He was genuinely trying to be a better person. She saw how he treated his employees with respect, how he volunteered at the soup kitchen with a smile, how he went out of his way to help others. She realized that he wasn't just a grumpy billionaire. He was a kind, generous, and surprisingly funny person. And she started to like him. Not just as a boss or a friend, but as something more. She found herself looking forward to seeing him each day. She enjoyed their conversations, even the silly ones about laundry and grocery shopping. She laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones. and she felt a warmth spread through her whenever he smiled at her. She was surprised by her own feelings. She had never thought she would fall for someone like Richard, but he had changed so much. He was no longer the arrogant billionaire she had met weeks ago. He was someone special, someone she cared about deeply, and she knew, deep down, that something amazing was happening between them. The day Richard decided to tell Maya how he felt was a disaster from the start. He woke up late, spilled coffee on his shirt, and couldn't find his lucky socks. He was a nervous wreck. He planned to take Maya to a fancy restaurant, but he chickened out at the last minute. Instead, he invited her to his apartment for a casual dinner. He hired a chef, of course, but he insisted on setting the table himself, which resulted in a shattered wine glass and a near meltdown. When Maya arrived, she looked beautiful. Richard's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly forgot everything he had planned to say. They ate dinner in awkward silence. Richard kept clearing his throat and fidgeting with his silverware. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he blurted out, "Maya, there's something I need to tell you." He took a deep breath. Well, you see, I've been thinking." He trailed off, unable to find the right words. Maya looked at him expectantly, her eyes filled with warmth and concern. "Yes, Richard." He swallowed hard. I really appreciate everything you've done for me," he stammered. You've really changed my life." He paused, searching for the courage to say what he really wanted to say. And I think I might, maybe possibly, have some feelings for you." He said it all in a rush, barely audible. He looked down at his plate, mortified. He sounded like a complete idiot. He was Richard, the billionaire, the master of the universe, and he couldn't even tell a girl he liked her without sounding like a bumbling fool. Maya smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Richard," she said softly, "I think I might, maybe, possibly, have some feelings for you too." She gently reached across the table and took his hand. Richard looked up, his eyes wide with surprise. Her hand was small and warm in his. He felt a jolt of electricity run through him. He wasn't alone in this. He squeezed her hand gently. "Really?" he whispered, his voice filled with hope. Maya nodded, her smile widening. "Really?" She paused. "You know, Richard, you've changed so much. You're not the same grumpy billionaire I met a few weeks ago." Richard chuckled. "I hope not," he said. "I'm trying." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just holding hands and looking at each other. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. It was a sign of trust, of affection, of something real and beautiful. Then Richard did something completely unexpected. He stood up, pulled Maya out of her chair, and gently wrapped his arms around her. It was a shy, hesitant hug, but it was filled with warmth and sincerity. Maya hugged him back, burying her face in his shoulder. She felt safe and happy in his arms. She knew that this was just the beginning of something special. They might have a long way to go, but they were together. And that was all that mattered. They held each other for a long time, just enjoying the moment and the feeling of being close. The world outside seemed to fade away. It was just them in their own little bubble of happiness. In the days and weeks that followed, Richard continued to change. He spent less time worrying about his business and more time with Maya. He realized that money and power weren't everything. What truly mattered was kindness, compassion, and love. He continued to volunteer at the soup kitchen, now with Maya by his side. He helped his employees with their problems, offering advice and support. He even started a foundation to help people in need. He learned that being rich and arrogant was lonely and empty. Being kind and caring was fulfilling and joyful. He had finally found true happiness, not in his wealth or his power, but in his relationships with others. One sunny afternoon, as he and Maya were walking hand in hand through the park, Richard stopped and looked at her. "Maya," he said, "thank you. Thank you for showing me what really matters in life." Maya smiled. "You did it yourself, Richard," she said. "I just helped you see it." Richard squeezed her hand. "I love you, Maya," he said. "More than anything in the world." "I love you too, Richard," Maya replied. They kissed, a long, sweet kiss that sealed their love. It was a perfect moment, a testament to the power of kindness and the transformative power of love. Richard was no longer the grumpy billionaire. He was a happy, loving, and genuinely good person. He had finally found his place in the world, not at the top of a skyscraper, but right beside Maya, helping others and making the world a better place. He was finally truly happy. Years later, Richard and Maya were still together. They lived in a cozy house, not a fancy mansion, and spent their days helping others and enjoying each other's company. Richard was no longer known as the grumpy billionaire. He was known as the kind and generous philanthropist who had changed the lives of so many people. He still ran his business, but he did it with a new perspective, treating his employees with respect and fairness. He and Maya often laughed about the day they met when he tripped over her step stool and ruined his expensive suit. It was a reminder of how far they had come and how much they had changed. They proved that even the most arrogant and grumpy people can change, that even billionaires can learn the value of kindness and compassion. They showed the world that love can blossom in the most unexpected places, even between a billionaire and the woman who made him endure pain. And so, their story became a legend, a reminder that it's never too late to change, that kindness is always the best choice, and that love can conquer all, even arrogance and wealth. They continued their work, side by side, helping others, sharing their love, and making the world a better place, one small act of kindness at a time. They lived happily ever after, proving that even grumpy billionaires can find true love and lasting happiness. The end.